Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the July 3rd Thursday Web Forum for the Southeast Conservation Adaptation Strategy, or SECAS, partnership. I'm Hillary Morris. As always, I work on user support and communications for the Southeast Conservation Blueprint, and we host this webinar series on the third Thursday of every month right here at 10 a.m. Eastern Time as an opportunity for staff to share the latest updates on the blueprint, get input and involvement from folks like y'all, and highlight exciting science and action in the world of landscape conservation in the Southeast and US Caribbean. So here's our agenda for today. I'll start out by introducing our speakers. They'll present for 30 to 40 minutes or so on our topic for the day. We'll have time for questions and discussion at the end, and then I'll wrap up by previewing next month's webinar and sharing some updates from your SECAS staff. As a heads up, I am recording this web forum, as you can probably see. It's just as an option for the couple of folks who inevitably wanted to attend but had a conflict. I will link the slides and the video from the calendar event on the SECAS website within a couple of days, and I think Shan and Jennifer are going to be circulating that recording as well with their colleagues. Any questions or comments before I introduce them and we get started? All right, then not hearing any. Today we're going to be hearing from Shan Cammack, who's a wildlife biologist and fire management officer with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, as well as Jennifer Fawcett, who's an extension associate at NC State University and the Prescribed Fire Work Group Coordinator for the Southeast Regional Partnership for Planning and Sustainability, known as SURPASS. And they're going to be talking about what recent changes in the EPA's National Ambient Air Quality Standards mean for prescribed fire in the Southeast and how we can maintain our high level of prescribed fire in this region. So with that, Jennifer, I think you're going to get us started. So I'll go ahead and hand off to you to share your screen.
Great. Thanks so much for inviting me today. Happy to be here. Happy to share this information with you all. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview just on some of the background. So my slides might be a little bit more on the boring side just because it's setting the stage a little bit. But then when I pass it off to Shan, she has lots of really great information. So today, the reason that this topic is coming up because earlier this year, the EPA strengthened the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And those are PM 2.5, which I'll talk about in a second, but they're basically the small inhalable particles that are produced by combustion of wood, gas, oil, some other things, and they can affect public health. And so this new standard has potential impacts on prescribed burning because of the monitors that might not be meeting this lower number based on the smoke that's being put in the air from prescribed fire. Wildfire obviously also causes a lot of smoke. So this topic has been an important topic for a lot of land management agencies and others, public health agencies across the country. So we just wanted to share a perspective from the southern region. I'll start by giving an overview, and then Shan is going to go into a little bit more detail about ways that we can work on these action items. No matter what your role is, it seems like there's a role for everybody here because there's a lot of work that needs to be done around this topic. So just to give a little bit of background, earlier this year, a number of stakeholders convened in Georgia with the EPA to talk about the strengthened air quality standards and what that looks like in Georgia. Georgia is by far the state that's going to be affected the most by this topic. So it made sense that this event took place in Georgia. Shan was at the event along with several others. And there was just overwhelming agreement across Georgia and across the entire management community in the southern region that prescribed fire is a critical in maintaining resilient ecosystems, promoting cleaner air by reducing the fuels that could potentially lead to catastrophic wildfires. So the goal was to discuss the impacts of that new standard on prescribed burning, especially in light of the desire to see more fire on the landscape. So how can we get more fire, but also meeting these new strengthened ambient air quality standards? So I will go into a few slides here just to give a little bit of background on what is PM? Where does it come from? So this diagram, I think, is the best way to kind of show it. But if that's a hair follicle, and there's PM10, these are things that you can see: dust, pollen, mold, etc. And then even smaller than that is the PM 2.5, which is what is in smoke. And this is the one that is the public health concern primarily. It's combustion particles, organic compounds, very, very, very small. You can see how many of those would fit in even just a strand of hair. So why is it a public health concern? It's because they can enter the respiratory tract and make its way into the lower part of the lungs. So the air quality standards were strengthened in order to meet this public health concern. Lots of information went into that. You can see kind of all of the exposures to PM 2.5, and then it affects at-risk populations a lot more. So it is a public health concern. The final rule that came out previously, before this, it was 12. The standard was 12. Now it's 9. So, and that happened in February of this year. So it reduced it by 25%, which is quite a bit. So now we're just trying to figure out, as a fire community, what is that going to look like? Could it potentially affect prescribed burning across the region? And the answer is yes, it has that potential. In the southern region, we're obviously not going to be as affected as other parts of the country. This map is a little bit old. EPA provided this. It doesn't have the new data, so it might actually look a little bit different than this, but this isn't too far off. So as you can see in the southern region, Georgia is going to be the most affected. Those dark green areas are the counties that are not going to meet the new standard that of 9. And like I said, it's going to end up looking a little bit different than this once all the data is in here. But some states in the South may not be affected, but in general, there are some places that are going to be affected. And also, we just want to make sure that air quality is clean everywhere. So we'll do the best that we can. And Shan's going to go over some examples of ways that we can handle smoke management. And for my last slide, I just want to talk about the process that is available. So now we know, there are some areas that are not going to meet this new standard, but what can we do for prescribed burning? And so there's a process called exceptional events. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I'll put some links in the chat after this, just in case you're interested in learning more about it. But basically, there's a description that the EPA provides about what an exceptional event is. And there's a process where prescribed burns can be submitted as an exceptional event. So basically, they wouldn't be counted towards those that lower strengthened standard. And there's a long and tedious process of collecting lots of information and putting a lot of information in there that our state forestry agencies and our state air quality agencies and others are working on. So that's actively in the works right now to create some templates. There's never been one submitted for prescribed fire before, so this will be a new endeavor for us to work together to try to do that. And that's what Surpass, the group that I work with, is particularly interested in. Is there a way that we can streamline this process, because Georgia is going to have more than 200 of these submittals, and then other states will have some as well. So that's a very high level overview, but just to provide a little bit of context as to why everything that Shan's about to talk about will be important moving forward. So Shan, I will pass it off to you.
Hey, y'all. Thanks. Hillary, you want to say anything in the transition?
No, you're all set. Take it away.
All right, sharing screen. Here we go. All right, y'all, how's that look?
Looking good.
Excellent. So my name is Shan Cammack. I'm the Fire Management Officer for Georgia DNR. I'm also a member of the Georgia Interagency Burn Team and the Georgia Prescribed Fire Council. I want to talk about 3 things today. First, the State Wildlife Action Plan and prescribed burning and how those tie in together. Next is about the NACs. And then finally, we're going to end up with some action items that you guys can be working on. So as all of us know on this meeting, fire is an important part of the landscape from the mountains to the sea. We also know that in the absence of fire, we're going to get this buildup of vegetation or fuels that can lead to catastrophic wildfire. Now, I think the public gets this, and when they think of wildfires, they think of big scary fires that are burning down the trees and, burning down buildings, but are they thinking about smoke? Because the South will burn. And either we pick the day, as we did here at the Chattahoochee, at the Oconee National Forest, this is 2,000 acres on fire, or Mother Nature picks the day. And trust me, she is not checking the fire weather dashboard to see if there's good dispersion index or mixing height for the day. Now that smoke is going to last for months, and it's going to be chock full of PM 2.5 and all kinds of pollutants. So this is why we have adopted prescribed fire as a safe way to apply that natural process, ensure ecosystem health, and reduce wildfire risk. So that is the one message, many voices that we're supposed to talk about. I was an English major, so I like to just add things and invent words. So I like to also say it's also our most effective tool, essential tool in managing wildlife, creating resilient ecosystems, and actually promoting cleaner air. And this is part of what I need everybody to help educate the public about how prescribed burning is actually making the air cleaner. Now, the South leads the country in prescribed burning, as this map shows. And here in Georgia, we have pyrrhic habitats and species that rely on fire in every part of our state, all across every ecoregion. So, especially endangered species, that's what my group, Wildlife Conservation Section, focuses on. This lovely indigo snake and gopher tortoise need fire in the landscape. So that's why, since 2005, in our State Wildlife Action Plan, the SWAP, prescribed fire is the #1 tool and the #1 conservation theme, promoting that on the landscape. And this is our blueprint for managing wildlife diversity, right? So in 2015, we had 3 major things for fire. One was collaboration and partnership. We're really lucky in Georgia. We have this thing called the IBT, the Interagency Burn Team. This is where private, state, and federal partners can come together to burn, share resources, expertise, and skills in the name of rare species. Looking at this graph, over the past 20 years, each agency is doing better, and we're all doing better. And I really think it's that synergy of the collaboration that makes it such a success. Now, at DNR, we're doing better. So if you look at that orange line on the graph, that's the number of acres that we've burned in the past 20-something years. And we're burning a percentage of the acres of that we own. But look at that blue line. That is outstripping us. Our real estate guys are awesome. We are protecting lands. But you can't just buy land and hold on to it. You've got to manage it. So is it enough? It's not enough. We need to be burning more. Another conservation action in 2015 was to encourage the use of prescribed fire on private lands. Now, Georgia is more than 93% privately owned. So if we're going to be managing wildlife resources, we've got to reach the landowners, right? Now, look at all these cool things we did. We had learn and burns and demonstrations and workshops. We developed videos and fact sheets and webinars. Burner Bob was hatched in the last 10 years, and he got out to spread the good message of prescribed burning. We knocked it out of the ballpark, right? Well, then you look at this little graph of silviculture acres burned in Georgia over the last 20 years is trending down. Well, dang. So if IBT acres are up, but overall acres are down, that means private acres are down. So a 2025 top conservation action is to increase the number of acres burned on private lands. And what are the barriers that Miss Heather is facing? And how can we help her and other private landowners get fire on their land? Now, something we're all struggling with is climate change. This research shows that in the future, there are going to be fewer days available that are within our weather prescription. And if you drill down into the Southeast, especially in the growing season, you're not going to hit those good days for burning. That's pretty scary. Climate change is affecting us right now in droughts. You guys probably remember the 2016 fires. This drought hit during the fall and leaf fall and was just catastrophic wildfires across the Appalachians. I think like 1,700 structures burned down in Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. Another thing that we're dealing with is these flash droughts. We might be getting the same amount of moisture or rainfall throughout the year, but how it falls changes the way the fuels dry out, and that makes fire management more difficult. Another thing is hurricanes, increase in intensity. Hurricane Michael just hammered some really, really great habitat for red-cockaded woodpeckers. So we had to get back in there within weeks, and access was horrible, right? And get artificial nesting habitat for them reinstalled. But then also you've got all this debris on the ground. How do you reintroduce fire with all of that debris? Another problem we're all dealing with is increased population. People love the South and they're moving here. This is fragmenting our wildlife habitat and creating more wildlife urban interface. So 2025 conservation actions, I expanded them incredibly. 3 major topics here: increasing the number of acres burned on public lands, increasing the number of acres burned on private lands, and finally, education. And I think this is kind of a trifurcated approach, right? I want to start young. This is why I'm spending so much time with Burner Bob. Get out and teach young kids why conservation is important. Because if we can instill that ethic in them, we are creating a more empathetic and informed future, right? And then students, like college students, technical college students, these are the next land managers. So let's reach them with ecological concepts. And then finally, current practitioners, keep them up to date on the latest products and techniques in managing for diversity. But all over, all 3 of these conservation actions are about increasing the resiliency in native ecosystem, and that means fire. And with the strengthened air quality standards, how are we going to protect that? So that leads us to the question, so how do we conduct more prescribed fire, overcome all of these barriers, and meet this revised NACs? Now, Jen showed you some really cool slides with a lot of words on them, so I just want to do a little, let's break it down, NACs 101. So basically, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, sets the standard for clean air and clean water. And this is a good thing, right? We want clean air for the public. They set up monitors across the country that are constantly gathering that air quality data. Now, if an area is in violation, not meeting those standards, the state air quality agency has got to set that course for getting you back into attainment. And that usually means some kind of emission control. Let me just mention what happened to you guys a few years ago in Atlanta. Atlanta was out of attainment for ozone. And what EPD decided was, in all these counties, we're going to have a limit on burning. And if you see those green counties, it was an absolute burn ban between May and September for prescribed burning. Now, it wasn't like, oh, it's a bad day or you have to meet these parameters. It's like, nope, absolutely no burning. So changes in NACs and the ability to meet attainment has real teeth. So what we're talking about here, the really little bitty stuff, PM 2.5, that's in smoke. It is not pleasant. Trust me, I'm just getting over poison ivy inhalation. Not good, right? But also a public health issue, right? Cardiovascular, respiratory, long-term effects. So they have changed that standard. Here are our monitors in Georgia. And if you look at the data over the past 15 years, we're doing pretty well. That former standard for the annual was 12 micrograms per meter squared. They dropped that to 9. We're in trouble in some parts of the state. And this is what it looks like. These are the areas in the state that we think are going to have a problem with meeting this new standard. So the tabletop, this is where we all came together. Thankfully, everybody was on board. Prescribed fire is necessary. We want to see more prescribed burning. That's great. But we have to meet the law. We have to make sure the air is healthy for the public. What do we do? And that's where we identified exceptional events as that pathway. Now, exceptional event, you usually think of that as some big, scary thing like sub-Saharan dust storm or those Canadian wildfires, right? That smoke came down from Canada, was pinging on our monitors, and you're like, wait a minute, that was not our fault, right? We cannot control that. Please exclude that data. And that's cool. An exceptional event allows you to exclude data. Luckily, the EPA has set prescribed burning as one of the things that could be considered an exceptional event. But what does that look like? Well, let me tell you, in Georgia, it's crazy. So what we're looking at here, if you see that 53 kind of in the middle of the screen, that's our Albany monitor. All those blue lines are high split back trajectories of smoke, and all those little orange and red triangles and blocks are prescribed fires. So it's a single type of emission, but multiple sources. And an EE demo would have to provide data on every single fire that hit that monitor that day. And that could be a lot. Here's one busy day in Georgia. This wasn't even our busiest day. 1,000 people are out there burning. And across the Southeast, it's lit up, especially in March. That's a very popular time for people to be conducting prescribed burns. So there are thousands of burns going on at any time during March. So the exceptional event demonstration requires a number of things for each of these burns. I have highlighted the ones that I think we can really address with a SWAP, the State Wildlife Action Plan. The narrative conceptual model. You can list burn objectives in your SWAP and then tie those to the burn permit. What about not reasonably controllable, not reasonably preventable? You can describe foregone benefits like resiliency of ecosystem, forest health, mitigating for wildfire. What about human activity not likely to recur at a particular location? This is where a natural fire return interval map can come in. But if you're burning outside that interval, you can also include more flexible language about restoration burns. So for Georgia, for the SWAP, we're right in the middle of finalizing our SWAP. We've developed a fire return interval map from the Guyette data in 2012. This is what it looks like for Georgia. We've also made this a vector so it can be layered with our burn permits. We've also developed these maps for wildfire risk mitigation. Georgia's leading the country in forest resources, so prescribed burning, that graph or the map on the left, is going to protect our Georgia forests. And then as people are moving to Georgia, you can see wildfire risk is going up. These two maps are going to address foregone benefits. Another thing we tried to think about was rare species. This is a really, really tough one. I wanted a heat map of fire adapted rare species. Couldn't quite do it, but this is what we came up with. I learned a new word, chloropleth. What we did was we looked at 472 species of greatest conservation need for our SWAP, the plant species, and we found that 220 of them are either fire benefited or fire adapted. So we dropped their element occurrence records onto these region 4 ecoregions, and then we added them all up, and that shows the hotspots of biodiversity in the state that need fire. We're building a story map because the SWAP is kind of a static thing for 10 years. The story map is going to have this information, and it's going to be a dynamic thing that can change through time as we get new information. Now, back to the EPA stuff. So there are things about basic smoke management practices. You can have a certified smoke management plan. Georgia has one, and getting a permit covers this. If you don't have that, then you can prove that best smoke management practices were done. And again, this has to be on every single fire that's included in that EE demo. Another thing is communication and public notification. This is somewhere I think we all need to be working a little bit more, and hopefully you guys can help us with that. And then here's more public notification that's under the mitigation requirements. They want public education, they want public notification, and it's all about protecting public health. So what we're doing for that, now there's some really great information out there about how wildland fire smoke is bad and how it affects you, but I think the EPA really wants it to be more targeted. I think the Forest Service does a good job. You know, they'll like put their maps out like, hey, we're burning the Chattahoochee today. Here's our burn unit. You're going to see smoke in the air. Watch out. This is cool. So we are working on an education campaign that we want all of you guys to share with us to get out to all of the people that might be affected. So no matter who you work for or what you do, what your skill set is, there are things that you can do to help us. And here are the action items from my perspective. So for that public education thing, you can take our moniker here and you can add, when there's smoke in the air, here's what you can do to protect yourself and your family. So one thing that we can do, promote the Air Now app and website. This is an excellent resource that shows you air quality standards, real time, where fires are, wildland fires, and even gives you smoke trajectories. Now, one thing we're going to be doing is developing this message and getting it to local health departments, right? Because they're the ones that are actually reaching the at-risk populations. But we really, really want to share a unified message so that people aren't confused. Another thing that you can do is check in to see if your state has a certified smoke management plan. In Georgia, we've got one. It's from 2008, so it's a little outdated. So we're updating that right now, and we're bringing in more partners. Engage with your SWAP and your Forest Action Plan coordinators. If you can get these maps listed and this text into one of these plans that are recognized, this can help support EE demos. And I've got a list there of the different things. I've developed like a 15-page concept paper on prescribed burning that I can share with anybody. Please use it as you see fit. The GAIET data, this is the national data set. We have the Southeast that we can share that data, but the rest of the country is available. So reach out to us and we can tell you how to get your hands on that data. Jen and I deployed these really cool fire and air surveys to fire chiefs across the Southeast and air protection directors. Basically, we kind of wanted to know, where are you guys? I mean, are you going to be doing an EE demo? Does your state have a permitting system, a tracking system? Are you talking to your SWAP coordinators and getting this into the plan? And so we're getting the results and we're looking at the recommendations now. And I think it's going to be a really, really important tool to raise awareness on this issue and help other states navigate the EE demo process. So link your SWAP or your FAP with your burn permits. And here in Georgia, we have got to make this as automated as possible. I think these things are going to be like over 100 pages each. And we think we might have 200 to do each year moving forward. So what you see on the left there is our fire return interval map. You see the burn permits have been dropped onto them. Jim has proven the clear causal relationship with a high split back trajectory and then tied it with a burn permit. And then on the right, you see the different management objectives for fire. These are in the SWAP, and these are the questions that we ask when you actually get a permit. This addresses the purpose of the burn. Now, this is reliant on a very robust tracking system. And by robust, I mean it's a centralized system where you can get a hold of that data. It's got a Latin long, so you know where that fire is, right? And there's some kind of smoke management planning. It's really, really important to show the clear causal relationship, so you got to know where the fire is. And then, you know, when we get a permit here in Georgia, they're running V-smoke. So we're already doing that best smoke management practice right off the get-go, getting our permit. So, of course, the best thing that we can do is the wildland fire lighter has got to pick the right day and manage our smoke. We need to know what our smoke sensitive areas are. And these are things like, you know, roads and schools and hospitals, but we also have to start thinking about the airshed. And we are sharing an airshed, and it might be a good day for burning, but not a good day for smoke, because it's been a great day for burning all week. The airshed is already full. So you might not get a permit that day, and you need to understand that. So the concept of airshed. So we need to make sure our wildland firelighters know how to read fire weather dashboard, get the information that they need on mixing height, dispersion index, and Turner to be able to manage their smoke. In Georgia, we've got this thing called the Wildlife Public Viewer. This is something that's being updated right now. You can actually see current prescribed burns that are going on. We're going to add wind vectors to this and air quality data. This will be super helpful as you're making that go, no go decision of seeing how much burning is in the area already. So use all the tools in your smoke management toolbox. If you're doing a simple burn, do a simple smoke screening tool or the V-smoke. And then if you're doing a more advanced, aerial burn, big acreage, run a high split trajectory or use PB Piedmont, a more robust smoke management tool. And this is a really cool little tool that we developed here in Georgia, and we're trying to take this to the Southeast. We overlaid conservation lands with the air quality monitors, and these are typically in densely populated areas, right? So we don't want to be putting smoke there anyway. And then current wind direction, so you can quickly and easily see if it's a good day for you to be burning. There's all kinds of great resources out there on best smoke management practices. So encourage people to check out the Southern Fire Exchange, some of the webinars and fact sheets. In fact, they've got this new web link with all of the smoke management stuff in one place. So that's super cool. Extension came up with this really comprehensive smoke management guidebook for prescribed burning. Everybody should get a hold of that. This is available online. And Tall Timbers is about to drop a video. I think it's about a 2-hour smoke management course about being smoke savvy. So hopefully we'll be seeing that soon. And then I encourage people to participate in their prescribed fire councils in their state. This is a great place to come together, hear about the latest research and strategies, share information about smoke management and lessons learned. In Georgia, our membership has been going up. We've revamped our website to get these resources out to the people. It's a really cool thing. And PBAs, prescribed burn associations, are becoming more popular. This is a great place for interested landowners and folks to come together and help each other burn, but they're also sharing resources and sharing information, and they offer cool things like workshops, and this is another way to get the information out. And then the day of the burn, I'm encouraging our guys to be creative. Use the tools that are available and ignition strategies to get your smoke up and out fast. Things like pyro shots, right? These are a couple grand. You can just shoot balls of fire where you need, and you can get your smoke up and out faster. If you got an extra 100K laying around, I encourage you to buy an Ignis drone to shoot fires, aerial ignition. These things are super amazing in terms of finessing where you burn, the fire effects that you get, and you're going to burn faster and lift your smoke in the best part of the day. And also be creative in expanding your burn units. A lot of people are comfortable only burning part of the year. So if they can just get outside that comfort zone, spread those fires throughout the year, we're spreading our smoke throughout the year, right? And you remember, Burner Bob says pyrodiversity enkindles biodiversity. So changing up the scale, intensity, and timing of your burn is going to help manage wildlife diversity. So a lot of great minds on this call today. So I encourage you guys to work together to help us advocate for prescribed fire so that we can manage wildlife diversity, build resilient ecosystems, and promote cleaner air. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shan and Jennifer. This was fantastic. So many amazing resources, and great to hear about all the fantastic work going on in Georgia and elsewhere. We have plenty of time for questions. You're fine. Sometimes you might need to go back to slide for a question.
There we go.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, no questions about math. I was an English major, so I'm just putting that out there first thing.
Well, it means you're a very compelling speaker. We've got plenty of data heads on the call if we need to get into the weeds. Well, I'm just going to open the floor. Please feel free to drop questions into the chat, and I'm happy to read those out for the recording. Or if you'd like to just unmute yourself or raise your hand, I can kind of direct traffic, and we'll see what questions you have for Shan and Jennifer. Go ahead, Louise.
Thanks, Shan. And Jennifer, I always love seeing y'all present. It's really good. One thing that I don't think I really had done a good job of considering before is that burning on inhospitable days or when you might have wildfires, that smoke can stick around. And so I hadn't really kind of considered that with some of the wildfires, that burning on the wrong day can mean can even shorten the window of when you can do a prescribed burn if the airshed is already filled. Would exceptional events kind of cover that if there had been, like, let's say in Georgia, like a wildfire in North Carolina, and some of that air quality had kind of dumped into Georgia and was hanging out for a while? Would you still be able to do wildfires as exceptional events in that situation, or?
Yeah, the trick there is you're going to have to coordinate with across state boundaries, because you're going to have to gather. You're going to have to prove where that smoke came from. So if it's some of your prescribed fires, but some of their wildfire. And, you know, Jen, I don't know if you can answer that. I mean, a wildfire EE demo looks very different than a prescribed fire EE demo. So that's a very good question.
Yeah, and there have been EE demos submitted and approved for wildfires, but there have never been any done for prescribed fires. There is last year with the Canadian wildfire smoke, for example, it was just, it affected so many monitors across the entire region. And so the state of Florida, their air quality department just put together a template exceptional events demonstration for the Canadian wildfire smoke specifically, because there's going to be a lot of states that had last year's impacts show up on their monitors. So they have that available as a template now. The EPA took a look at it and said, yes, this report that you put together meets all the components of an exceptional events demonstration. I think what they're looking to do next is to look at that over state lines, because like you were just saying, you know, if there's smoke from a wildfire in one state, but it goes into another state, how do we submit a demonstration for something that's crossing state lines? And so that's the next step, is to put together a template to try to look at what that would look like. So you're going to have not only the state air quality agencies and state forestry agencies working together in their own state, but then they're going to have to work across states now. So that is possible. You could submit an exceptional event for that. You'd still have to follow that process, and there's different information for wildfires and prescribed fires, but EPA would have to, you know, go through the whole process of approving it. And since it's never been done before, we're not really sure how long that could take, but could be up to months before that actually gets approved. And it takes just as long, if not longer, for the air quality agencies to put those documents together. I think the one California put together one that was like 200 and some pages long for one demonstration. And Georgia is going to have to do more than 200 of these, you know, so it's a lengthy, data resource intensive process. So that's why we're trying to figure out how to streamline all of this. But I think, going back to your original question, I think, that it's possible. It's just not, it's unclear yet what that would look like, or there's no like template out there for that yet.
200 pages?
Yes.
Shan, it's a good thing you were an English major.
I'm not writing these. The poor EPD is going to have to write all these.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure. So the one that Jim Boylan's putting together for Georgia, I haven't seen what that one's going to look like yet, but it is.
I think he said about 100 pages.
100. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work. One of the questions we asked in the survey that Shan mentioned was, or actually, I think this came up separately, but just the question of how do you have the staff capability or the resources even available as they currently stand to be able to work on these? And I think Jim said he's planning to hire like 3 new staff or something along those lines, just to meet the need of the current ones. And that's not even including, you know, what's to come in the future.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't find a way to streamline this is like, for Georgia, 200 of these a year. And it's just the same thing over and over. Like, oh, here's the back trajectory. Here's the purpose of the burn. Here's the fire returners. Like, really, guys, come on. Is there another way? But we don't have another way right now. And think about this, you know, anything that happens can be challenged in court. So these EE demos have got to be robust, and they have got to meet everything that EPA has set out, or they're going to run into trouble.
This is so fascinating and so complicated. And I can totally see why there is a huge need for a regional approach and streamlining. Janie, I'm going to take your question next, and then Doug Newcomb. Keep sticking those hands up if you'd like to get in the queue.
Hi, this is Janie Becker. I'm in Tennessee and working on our swap. And so this is very elementary, and I'm not a burn expert, and I'm not an air quality expert, but I'm trying to understand if we do get these exceptional events, if we get it written into the swap so that it can be allowed for prescribed burning, does that mean that there would be other emissions that would be restricted because, you know, some of the air quality, I wouldn't say degradation, but there were some of the, because the emissions would be allotted for a certain amount of wildfire or prescribed burning rather. How does this affect other emissions that are going on?
It doesn't really affect, it's actually, you're just saying on this day, can you exclude this data because we're calling this an exceptional event. So they're just taking that data away from that day's number, and then you're recalculating that number. So you're just asking to exclude the data because it was a prescribed burn that met all the criteria.
Okay, so it just doesn't go into the annual or to that day's portion of the annual emissions.
Right, that's right.
Okay, so exclusion, not just exceptional event, but it's excluded from the air quality report
data.
State data, yeah. Okay,
yeah,
that helps so much. I'm trying to figure out how this works.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit too, so this is all after the fact, right? So this isn't before asking for permission to be able to do it. It's down the road once all the data has come in and, oh, this triggered an exceedance on this day. Can we take out the prescribed burning? But it wouldn't, like Shan was saying, it wouldn't affect the other things because you're asking it specifically for prescribed burning. And it may be that maybe that prescribed burn after you take that out was enough to get it below. But if there's like in big cities like Atlanta Shan was talking about Atlanta before, you know, there's obviously other contributors in big cities and places like that. So it's going to depend a little bit on where you're, you know, which monitor was triggered to and what other sources could have gone into that. But
so it's only it's a reactionary need to justify it or to demonstrate that it was reasonable and allowable through an exceptional event. You can't do it. It's not something you do proactively other than prepare that. Okay, so you always would have to go in and after you get dinged to say this is what was going on. It was covered by this. Okay,
but it's very important to be proactive now to think about the things. If you need an EE demo in the future of like, hey, were you doing public notification? Were you getting information out to the public of like where you're burning and how to protect themselves? And I mean, really, if we can all just be better managers of our smoke and not ping those monitors, then we're not going to have to write as many exceptional events.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot.
The other thing, just real quick, as a last point, in North Carolina right now, we are talking about trying to get a handle on where there might be smoke impacts in the future. So we have talked about sending out a survey to all of our land management agencies across the state to ask them what are their future prescribed burning plans in different areas to try to find out, you know, are there some areas where we can predict that there will likely be more smoke because they're anticipating on ramping up their prescribed burning. So like state parks, for example, in North Carolina, they've already said, our goal is to triple the amount of prescribed burning that we're doing across North Carolina because that's what's needed here. So it might be interesting for other states to maybe think about doing something similar where you can kind of come up with a projection of where you might have some impacts in the future. So that way we can start to anticipate that and just start to think about that now. So it's won't be exact data until after the fact, but at least that way we can start to prepare.
That makes a ton of sense. Thanks for that clarification. Great questions, Janie. Doug, I've got your hand next, and don't forget you can use the chat as well, y'all.
Well, I had a bit of a curiosity about your map on fire species. Did you also include the GBIF data, or were you just working with the element occurrence data from the Natural Heritage Program?
No, I wish we had range maps for rare species, but we don't. So all I could do is the EORs, which is only where we know. And that's why I kind of lumped them in by ecoregion, because those plants are probably in other places. So it was very crude map, but I just really thought that we could come with something that's just the best data that we have.
And the second thing is I did pop in a technical presentation from last year on a city in Italy that had done a low-cost air quality sensor network based from high schools. I think they cost like probably $300 a piece. And they integrated that into a network system for sensor observation service so that you could do real-time maps of air quality for that area. And I'm wondering if you thought about doing something similar to that for fire stations, so that you can get higher resolution air quality data that might allow you to burn when the coarser resolution data indicates that you might not be able to.
That's a really great question, Doug. I know the AirNow app uses the EPA monitors and uses Purple Now monitors, and it tells you like this data is from this one versus that one. And then Tall Timbers has a smoke lab that has been doing a lot of, they put a bunch of monitors out on pine plantations in the Albany area, and they were tracking and comparing those that data to the Albany monitor too. And actually they're coming up with this like, hey, you were restricting our burn permits last year based on transport winds, but according to our data, you weren't including wind direction. So let's put a wind direction on that, and I think we'd be able to burn actually more because this is what our monitors are showing. So it's really, really interesting data that we're getting out of those.
Well, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the chat, I was at a recent meeting of the North Carolina Sandhills and Greater Uwharrie's Conservation Partnership, and there was some discussion about using those Purple Air real-time air quality monitors and batting that around as an idea. And it was an interesting topic of discussion. They aren't regulatory monitors, but might give a better real-time sense of what air quality is like, and that help inform smoke management. Sounds like those conversations are ongoing in some parts of the Southeast.
So Hillary, I was just gonna, if it's okay, show really quickly how people can get to this. So if you go to the fire, the airnow.gov website, and then in the corner, there's kind of this data layer section, and you can turn on and off the different types of monitors. And so it's these low cost centers, not for regulatory purposes, that are the purple, where you can kind of see how many of them there are across the country. So I think, and I believe, I don't know if they're still available. There was a few months ago an opportunity for people to actually put them in their own yards. There were some available. I don't know if they're still available, but we could check with Kelly Cagle, is the U.S. Forest Service Region 8 that covers this region on smoke. I don't know if he's on the line. Kelly, you can actually, I see you on the line. If you have anything to add to that, if you want to chime in, if those are still available, if you can provide more content on that.
Yeah, good morning. As far as I know, we're down to maybe 5 or 6 of those left over, the freebies that she was trying to hand out. So most of them have been handed out. Not many left.
Well, that's good. Now, I don't know. I know there was some conversation around how accurate their accuracy, but at least they provide a little bit more extra assistance.
They do have to be calibrated. There's some sort of calibration process to make them line up exactly with the EPA monitors. And the Purple Air monitors, if I remember right, are maybe an hourly average, and the EPA monitors are a 24-hour average. So the numbers you're looking at any one point in time might differ just a little bit.
Great to know.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
There's a great webinar on Southern Fire Exchange about the AirNow and how it works, because you might see like air quality is bad in an area, but actually that's the smoke is getting out at a different level. So there's a really good explanation about what's being tracked and what that really means on the ground.
That's so interesting. We'll take Scott and then Sandy, and then we may be out of time. So let's reevaluate after that.
Hey, I'm Scott Turner out of Alabama, and so you guys have talked about, I guess, making more informed decisions across the board for the Southeast. And I know just tracking wildfire smoke this past spring, and since you guys mentioned Albany, some of the national forests in Alabama, we do some large-scale prescribed fires, especially in the springtime. And that smoke travels pretty good distances, especially on really good burn days. And one of the maps that you guys put out there was some of the backtracking of the V splits, high splits, coming into basically Albany from Alabama. So to make more informed decisions, is there a thought to put together a dashboard incorporating in stuff like the high split online, PB Piedmont, that forecasted air quality for like that day or the next day, and just basically having it and overlaying air sensors to basically have one portal or one dashboard to go to allow people to make those better, more informed decisions, saying, hey, like, we're looking to do maybe 2,000 acres today. What's that going to look like for Mississippi sensors, or what's that going to look like for Georgia's sensors, or what's that going to look like for Florida's sensors if we send that up there, kind of a thing. And getting a more holistic picture of not just the federal, but also, again, the state prescribed fire. Is there a thought to do something like that in the future?
I think that's awesome, Scott. And I'm hoping that Tall Timbers is going to be taking that on. I mean, being a Georgia DNR employee, it's like Georgia. So it's really, really important to think outside that box and realize, I mean, we're getting a ton of smoke from Florida and Alabama just because where we're sitting, unfortunately. So it's really important. One thing that I do caution these modelers and people that are creating these tools is like, I know my guys, right? If it's not easy and fast, they're not going to use it at all. So we've got to make that dashboard just like very accessible, very intuitive, and explain it well. But yeah, I think that would be awesome, a one-stop shop.
Yeah, it's definitely come out as a recommendation. I'm not aware of anything that's actively working on that, but maybe somebody else on the call has more information than we do, but that has come out as a recommendation from several groups. So we'll see where that goes. But I think that is important. And just one note too, because you mentioned affecting the sensors, and it's, I guess, a little bit more beyond the sensors. It's the communities that are living in those areas around the sensors. So it's less the sensors themselves, but more the communities. But in most cases, those sensors are in areas or communities where they're in more urban areas or there's a lot of people living there. So they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because you don't want to affect the people, but the sensors are also there. So just to point that out too.
Yeah, and we don't want to come across like, oh, we're only worried about these monitors. No, we're worried about public health. So when we develop these tools and get them out to people, we don't want it to be taken wrong. Hey, Scott, if you could shoot Jen and me an email about your ideas, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
no problem. And yeah, like I said, like it's just more or less like gathering a holistic picture. And yes, it is more than just about the sensors, but obviously tripping a sensor, and nobody likes more paperwork. We're doing enough paperwork for a prescribed fire. So
that's how we're choosing to measure the public health impact. So
exactly. Yep. Yeah. So thank you very much.
To keep the bottom line in mind. Jen and Shan, if you wouldn't mind dropping your emails in the chat so that Scott might have that at his fingertips, that would be awesome. And then I think, it looks like
Sandy had her hand. Your hand
down. If you had a question, the floor is yours.
Well, and that's something. Kind of touching a little bit on I forget the gentleman's name, but my name's Sandy Harrison from the Department of Conservation, Alabama. So it looks like to me that some of this stuff is going to be just amazingly problematic, and it's going to be a long road to hoe to try to figure out a way to do this and streamline it. But maybe smaller burns. I'm sitting there thinking, our guys in the field, a 500-acre burn is a fairly large burn for us, and I know the Forest Service is they kind of have a reputation for doing way larger burns than we do. So I'm wondering if the smaller burn is going to be a way to help mitigate some of this stuff instead of putting up 1,000 acres of fire, we're going to be putting up 200 acres of fire at the time. Anyway, it kind of works for us on the wildlife aspect because we like smaller burns anyway, patchwork, that kind of thing. But secondary question, this was the main one I was asking about, or wondering about, is if an air monitor is pinged from someone else's fire, are people that are burning in the vicinity that the smoke is not affecting that monitor, are we going to be drug into having to prove that our fire didn't affect? You see what I'm saying? If a monitor is pinged and there's 50 fires going on in the surrounding 3 or 4 counties, is everyone going to be drug into having to do an exceptional event? That's my question.
No. I mean, that's why you run that back trajectory, and it was going to clearly say, no, that smoke came from over there. We're not even worried about you guys. And
all right, that's cool.
I don't really think it's going to be you that's going to have to be doing the work. It's going to be your air quality director. Right. If they choose to write it.
We're going to be asked, I guess what I'm saying is that at some point in time, we're going to be asked for our information, and we need to make sure that information is handy and we can provide it in a timely manner. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why the burn permitting systems are important, to try to collect some of that data on the front end, so that way you can have that there. And the same thing with the communications. If there's any social media posts about the smoke, or however the information about the smoke is getting out to the communities, it would be good to have some sort of record of that. So that way, if the state air quality agency does come back to you and say, well, how did you notify the public, or how, give me more information. Mm-hmm.
We do post on our social media page about fires that we do. However, Fort Benning, whatever, I'm not even sure what the name. Anyway, it's going to be Benning to me, for this conversation. But I know Benning is notorious for just lighting up the world, and they don't ask, they don't tell, we don't get any insight for them, and they're right next door to a couple of our properties. So, we don't have much communication with them, if any at all. So it's kind of hard to plan that kind of stuff when, they rip snort on 4,000 acres, and we're over here trying to burn 250 and things get haywire. So there's some challenges. There's going to be some challenges for sure.
One of the things that has come out of that is working more with the military bases and them providing more real-time data on when they're burning and how much they're burning. And I think that's going well.
I got you. All right,
I know, Hillary, you're trying to wrap up. I just wanted to point out, I threw in the chat a fact sheet about basic smoke management practices to get to Sandy's question about smaller burns. And there's just lots of really great ways. So if you're a land manager and you haven't seen this fact sheet, or if you're a prescribed burner, these are some just basic smoke management practices, ways that you can minimize the effects of smoke impacts.
Thank you for those resources and the great questions and discussion, y'all. I absolutely hate to cut it off, but we are about at the end of the hour, and I want to be respectful of folks' time. This is what to expect from next month's webinar, same time, same connection information as today. That'll be August 15th, and we're going to be hearing from Jonah Evans with Texas Parks and Wildlife. I'm really excited about this talk. Texas Parks and Wildlife has kind of a structured process for overcoming analysis paralysis on rare species, and making sure that research that's done on rare species is targeting the types of gaps in information that will actually result in better management and conservation actions to benefit those species. So if you're interested in that, definitely tune in. And then the last thing I wanted to wrap up, if Rua, if you're on the phone, I might ask you to provide a quick update. We're having some review calls to look at grasslands and savanna trends in the SECAS goal report.
Yeah, so fitting for this project when we were just talking about the challenges of burning and maintaining grassland and savanna ecosystems. So we'll have some review calls kind of to take a look at some early numbers on grassland and savanna trends. So we're going to be looking at across states and counties, what are the trends related to just overall coverage of grasslands and savannas. And so this is just a little preview looking at not just what's happening, but where are those grasslands going when they're losing. So as you probably wouldn't be surprised, the numbers are pretty horrifying still, but there are spots of hope and spots where we're seeing some things turn around. So it's a good mix of scary and also signs for hope.
Thanks, Rua. This is using approaches from the new grasslands and savanna indicator in the 2024 blueprint to also measure trends over time. And if you want to sign up for one of those review calls, we would love to have you. And I put the link to a blog on the SECAS website that has the registration links there. And then with that, obviously, love for you to get more involved in SECAS. Here's some links on how to do that. And with that, I will go ahead and close this out and just thank Shan and Jennifer so much for that awesome presentation. We had fantastic attendance, great discussion today. Obviously, a topic that is top of mind for a lot of people in the Southeast. So thank you.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks everyone for being here. I hope you'll have a fantastic rest of your week and hope you'll tune in and join our presentation in August. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.